Yo, welcome guys, welcome guys. Steve here with Spikenard Culture podcast. I am here with a good friend of mine, Logan. He is,
What's up, everybody?
yeah, say hello to everyone, Logan.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah, so Logan is a good friend of mine. We go way, way back. But the reason I have him on here is because I want to start highlighting people who are dream chasers, people who are chasing their dreams and who have been chasing it for a while to just come and inspire different creatives who listen to the podcast. I just want to, introduce you guys a little bit to just give you a little taste of like what this crazy young man has done. So he, at 21 years old, had traveled to like 31 countries at that point. He's up to like 34 countries, 35 now. So I want to like talk to him about that. And then another thing, he's been to all the 50 states. So he's from Colorado Springs. And I'm going to be talking to him about his journey from high school on and just like how he pursued his passion for photography and his passion for travel. And so yeah, Logan, welcome. Can you just like introduce yourself a little bit, tell the audience who you are, where you're from, and just like a little bit of your journey, just like how did you start your love for photography and traveling?
Yeah, so I am from Colorado Springs, Colorado. I grew up kind of all over the US with my parents being in the military, especially my mom. I ended up living in places like Texas for most of my childhood, as well as Kentucky, Maryland. So even from a young age, I really traveled a lot and came from a family that believed in education through travel rather than, of course, going to school and all of that, but experiencing the world through, outside the doors of your house, rather than just you can tell someone something, but if you bring them there and show it with their own eyes, they're going to learn a lot more. So I think my parents really instilled that in me from an early age, and honestly, I had no idea about life abroad and cultures and other countries, continents in the world until honestly till I was about after high school. So my eyes were opened in a big way then. As far as photography goes, I got into photography, I'd say kind of early on into high school, just through the iPhone, honestly, just through having a phone camera. And, back then, even the iPhone 3, iPhone 4, even those cameras were pretty incredible for the phones of the day. And just through having an iPhone, 3 and 4 back in the day is kind of the first camera I ever really had and used. And when Instagram got started up in the 2011 or so, or probably even before then, but I started using Instagram as a platform to kind of take photos and just document some of the places I would travel, which was back then just in the States, but later became, around the world, and eventually upgraded cameras, and the passion just always grew from there.
So like for the young people who are listening, oh, like someone who's like interested in photography but they don't have the equipment, like so how how did you get started? How did you edit photos? How did you make some quality stuff with the little that you had?
Yeah, so something I always encourage people to do, especially who are getting started, is to use what you have. And ultimately, it's a lot of photographers say this, but the photographer or the person behind the camera is more important than the camera. And I think that's even more of a statement nowadays with quality cameras, even just on iPhones and Androids and just any mobile phones already have incredible cameras compared to cameras, 10 years ago. And uh, beyond that, I started myself with a pretty low level Nikon camera, probably retail value of around $200 to $300 back then. So overall, really cheap for a camera. But my encouragement is to just take photos of something that you enjoy. If you like taking photos of sunsets, sunrises, if you like going into nature, do that. If you like doing sporting events, if you like to take photos of that, do that. If you like taking portraits and capturing expressions of people, just dive into that more. And the good thing about photos is that you can take as many as you want with basically no extra cost. Back in the day, with film cameras, there was a cost to taking more photos. But now with digitalizing cameras and photos, you can take 1,000 photos and delete the ones you don't like. So my biggest encouragement is just take as many photos as you can, and you're gonna find a rhythm of which ones you actually like, which ones were kind of just didn't come out so well. So yeah, just experiment, get creative, and yeah, just even meet up with other photographers, and you can kind of just bounce ideas off of each other.
That's awesome. So like Logan, I also want to talk about, so you spoke about the idea of digitalization and how like I actually forgot that before before like literally a few years ago, everyone had those like, what were they called? Like you would like buy like one time use cameras
Yeah,
and you would
disposable
take like,
cameras.
yeah, like 30 photos, right?
Right.
Yeah, you like take 30 photos, you like take them to like a CVS and they like, give you the photos a few days later. I remember still, yeah, you'd get to you go to the CVS and they put it on like a CD for you or like, a flash drive. But you brought up
Yeah.
a really awesome point where you said there's no like loss in taking as many photos. And I never thought about how, in a sense, like the creatives before, like the photographers before, they had a limit. Like you couldn't just like go around, take photos and do whatever. So that was like, yeah, like that took me back. But yeah, like I also want to ask, like with the travel. So I mean, bro, how did you get started? Like, what was your first country? How did you just like say, man, I wanna just either go to the first country or like the first state? Like what made you think like, hey, I'm just gonna go to all these states, I'm just gonna go to all these countries? And do you have other ambitions as well? Like do you want to go to like all the nations? Like what's like your goal, what's your ambition?
Yeah. So probably my first, although I went to Mexico pretty young in my life, kind of just on a trip with my church, which I was really young. I wasn't too focused on travel, but that did open my eyes to kind of life outside of my sphere of knowledge and experience. And so I kind of always had that thought in the back of my mind. But even after high school, I got to travel a bit, to Europe with my family, and even that kind of just opened up my eyes as well. And I realized, especially one of the favorite countries I've been to, actually one of the first countries I've been to as well, is Iceland. And I think anybody can agree with me who's been to Iceland is when you go to Iceland, you see landscapes that you didn't even think were possible. Volcanoes, crazy waterfalls, geysers, and uh, just crazy cliffs and black sand beaches. It's just stuff that totally seems out of a movie. And I thought, dang, even with how diverse as America is, we don't have these landscapes and places and um, languages and cultures. So I think from that point on, I realized the world is worth seeing. And one of my biggest captivations has been with Asia, particularly because I think a lot of Americans in particular really dream after Europe, and Europe has a lot of cultures and history. But I think Asia has really kind of captivated me because of the kind of a just, you can go to some countries in Asia and it kind of feels like you're going into the past a little bit. And
Right,
to me,
right.
that kind of excites me, going to villages in the Himalayas, or going to places almost in the middle of nowhere, that no other foreigners really go to. And to me, there's just something magical almost, or just really interesting about going to these places that nobody knows about. And to me, sometimes it feels like an injustice that nobody knows about these places.
Tell us one place that you feel like it's like an injustice that no one knows about. Like just give us like at least one spot and then you can go on.
Yeah, I mean, immediately comes to mind is Central Asia. I think
Hmm.
Central Asia is incredible countries that people have no idea about. Like Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. Those countries out in Central Asia, I think, are kind of under the radar. And actually, right now, a dream in my heart is to kind of get a travel business going in the future for Central Asia, because I think they have a huge potential for tourism industry. But yeah, I don't know how they're undetected in a sense. I don't know how people don't know about them because they're crazy beautiful. I mean, you probably haven't seen pictures of these places, but they're just as good as not if not better than some landscapes you'd see in Europe or other places in the world.
And that's amazing. Yeah, like what I think about sometimes is like for people who have ambition, right? They have like this dream to travel or to see the things that you have. Maybe they don't have the finances or different opportunities. Like, what would you say to them, right? Like, where do they start, like in traveling? So you talked about photography, just kind of get started. Talked about the budget cameras or using your iPhone. So for traveling, like, what other tip do you have for people who want to travel, want to see the world?
Yeah, I'd say do what you can first. I think a lot of people underestimate even the ability of domestic travel. I think whatever country you live in, there is tons of beautiful things to see, and I think a lot of people. I mean, how many of us have friends or family who have lived in a city their whole lives but haven't even become a tourist in their own city or their own state or country. They haven't visited, the cool places around them just because they've kind of just become numb or it's become so normal to them. So I think that's always a great place to start. And like I said before, I ever went abroad, I traveled all over the U.S. and so you just start with opportunities you have. And also another advice I would give is traveling doesn't always have to be as expensive as people make it out to be. There's a way to make it cheap and or cheaper, I would say. Obviously travel can still be very expensive, but if you can plan a trip well, you can surprise yourself with how little you would have to spend in terms of keeping your eyes out for flights. I've done flights in the U.S. where I've flown to from Colorado to Houston, Texas for under $30 round trip. Just
Wow,
it's because
that's
I kept my
amazing.
eyes out for good flights. And I think sometimes you have to give yourself the opportunity that you could travel, give yourself the possibility of it instead of counting it out. For example, I have friends, all over the country, all over the world, and just from time to time I'll look up tickets, and majority of those times I don't buy tickets, but sometimes if I find a really good deal, I'll jump on that. So my advice would be give yourself the possibility of travel. Don't count yourself out because you have a low budget or have low money.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So now, as we close this section, I want to ask you about your future ambitions. So you've already gone to 34 countries. You've gone to the 50 states. What's like your next dream location? And do you want to go to all the countries? Like, what's your dream? Like, what's when it comes to photography, when it comes to travel, what's like your next spot? What's your ambition?
Yeah, so when it comes to all the countries, although kind of a lofty goal, and it sounds very exciting, I don't know if I would have that goal per se. I think the island countries honestly are what gets me. Those island countries, there's just so many of them. I don't know if I be able to visit them all, but I do really have big ambition to go to some of the continents I haven't really explored much of, like South America, which I haven't been to at all. Africa, I've only been to Northern Africa, Morocco, and also, just more places in Asia and Europe. I think Australia as well. Just some places, some whole entire spheres of the world I haven't even touched yet that are just waiting. So I would love to go to those places. And I also have a big ambition to go to places that, either are, really poor or have conflict zones and stuff like that, because I think photography is a powerful tool to tell stories and to get messages across to the world of places that people are uninformed about and places that people need to know about, so those are some of the places that are heavy on my mind usually.
That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, this is Logan again. He is our dream chaser of the month. And we're going to be having him again next week. So hang with us. And yeah, Logan, thank you so much for jumping on. And we'll see you for the next week.